So you're okay.
I'm so sorry. You don't think what's possible?
To take people's faces and voices out.
It probably is. There's probably a process that you can use to be able to edit those things. It's just not, I'm not somebody who knows a lot about video editing. So, but I'm sure there is a way. And maybe sometime down the road when I become better at video editing, I can just start editing people's faces out who aren't comfortable. But for now, I have to give the speech about not turning on your camera if you don't want to be recorded. So, welcome to dice reading class number 1. So, first of all, I would like to ask, does anybody in this class have any prior knowledge about ancient Arabic numerology or about using numerology to read dice? Awesome. So yes, some of you who have taken my previous classes, numerology is something that I love to discuss and talk about. Ancient Arabic numerology is one of my favorite forms of magical practice and divination work. So if you've taken my other classes, you've probably heard me go on rants about numerology. So we're going to go over that. So for a typical reading, you are going to want about 6 dice. But just like other forms of divination work, such as tarot or runes reading, there are multiple spreads. So we're going to start off with using about 3 dice. Then we're going to move to using about 6 dice. And then as you get good, you can use 20 dice if you would like to. You can use just 1. It all depends on you and what kinds of spreads you feel most comfortable using. And we're going to learn all of them, or a lot of them. So the first thing we are going to talk about is Arabic numerology and the history of numerology and where it comes from. So numerology as a tool for mysticism in general and as a tool for spiritual practice started in India and the Middle East. That is where numerology in general started as a form of spiritual work. Now, there are many places that were starting to use forms of numerology throughout East Asia. And so, East Asia, in my opinion, even though they didn't really start recording their use of numerology until about 100 years after Arabic communities did, and communities from India. But they were probably using it around very similar times. They just didn't record that information until about 100 years later. And numerology started to be used as a form of spiritual work in the Middle East and India about 3,000 years ago. And there are also records of it being used around the same time period in Egypt as well. But in Egypt, they would pair numerology with so many different aspects of spirituality that it wasn't considered strictly and only numerology. So when I say that, Egypt was using numerology about 3,000 years ago alongside India and the Middle East, but it was just numerology was a part of a ritual, that numerology was a part of a spiritual poem or spiritual literature, or it was part of death ceremonies or part of offerings to the gods, instead of being used all on its own. whereas in the Middle East and India, it was being used all on its own as a form of mysticism. So sorry, I am reading the chat to see if people have any questions. Cool. Awesome. Welcome, Michelle. I'm so happy you made it in. So
I so apologize. I never had this problem before.
that's okay. We're happy you're here. Don't worry, we just started.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. So, yes, about 3,000 years ago, you started to see numerology being used in the Middle East and India as a part of mysticism and spiritual work. And you were seeing it being used solely and on its own as a form of spiritual and mystical practice and magical practice, as well as spell work and divination very early on in the Middle East and India. And they were not using dice for these readings. Using dice for these readings was something that started in what we would know today as the borders of China, and throughout Mongolia and throughout a lot of different places in East Asia. You started seeing numerology being used to read people's personality, to read their future, to read their past, to discuss their love life, to discuss different aspects of their children's personality and of their job aspects or job prospects and career paths and all of that. You start seeing it being used in the form of dice throughout East Asia. As well as the Middle East and India, of course. So today we are really going to focus. Yeah, exactly. Yes, it was. So today we are going to focus, or at least at the beginning of class, we are going to focus on the number 1. And what really makes dice reading so much different from any of the other divination tools where numerology is used, such as the minor arcana in tarot, is that you are taking the number on its own. You are not pairing it with an element like you would with minor arcana in tarot. With minor arcana in tarot, you are taking the number and you are pairing it with the suit, like swords, and reading them together to help discuss and talk about situations that people might be going through in certain times in their lives. Whereas with dice, the only thing that you get is a number. So instead of understanding the number and how it might pair with the suit of swords, you are just trying to understand the number as a whole and how that number as a whole might represent somebody's personality, their love life, their career, their so on and so forth, and or how it might address the question that somebody has asked the dice. So we are going to start discussing the number 1. And the number 1 is the beginning of everything. It is the creation and manifestation of an idea, feelings, actions, reactions, or physical journeys. And something that's really going to change when you see the page that will be created on the website for dice reading specifically is all of this stuff that you see in here about the number being upside down or right side up. That's not a thing anymore. In dice reading, we do not use upside down or right side up. The number is just the number. That's it. So pay no attention to this paragraph that says when it's upright in its balanced form, it is independence and so on and so forth. We're not worried about that. We're just worried about the number itself and what it represents. But that does mean that we have to take into account what the unbalanced version of 1 is and what the balanced version of the number 1 is. And all numbers in Arabic mythology and Arabic numerology and Arabic practices, all numbers have a point of balance and a point of imbalance. And a lot of times in divination work, you can really see whether the number is balanced or imbalanced by looking at whether or not the number is right side up or upside down. But in dice reading, instead, you are going to take the number in its entirety, including its unbalanced properties and its balanced properties. And for example, when you are discussing and talking about astrology, and we might be talking about Sagittarius, which is I'm a Sagittarius, which is why I picked Sagittarius. But if we're talking about Sagittarius in astrology, you don't know whether or not the Sagittarius in itself is not going to be upright or upside down. You are going to discuss and talk about the amazing, beautiful, wonderful qualities of Sagittarius. And you're also going to talk about the parts of Sagittarius that might not be so amazing sometimes. And so that is much like dice reading, where you are going to talk about the number and its wonderful qualities that might be helpful to a person, that the person might love about themselves, that the person might find to be wonderful qualities about themselves and others, and also the parts of the number that the person might not love. So we are going to talk about one and its imbalanced properties and its balanced properties. So its balanced properties are that it represents independence, self-sufficiency, self-determination, and beginning projects that you are extremely passionate about, projects that you love, and also the beginning and manifestation of new ideas that you're extremely passionate about and excited about, and being able to start those journeys all on your own with using self-sufficiency and independence. And its unbalanced properties usually end up being continuation of starting projects and starting ideas and starting the beginning of journeys that don't always typically end well for you, and that you might not be very self-sufficient, that you might not be very independent, that you don't have a lot of motivation, you don't have a lot of determination, that you tend to give up very easily. You don't take a lot of time to contemplate things before you start them. You just start them without thinking because you're really excited, but you haven't really thought about the logistics of it or if it's going to benefit you in any way. You just get very excited about something and start it without really thinking. So there's so much to the number one. And a lot of times when people are reading, they just think about number one as starting a new job, starting a new career, having your first baby, all these firsts and new journeys that we can start. But in dice reading, because you are reading the number in its entirety, and this number all on its own, without any other context, has to be able to read the person as a whole. So when dice reading, a lot of the spreads that we are going to learn are not going to be something like past, present, future. They are not going to be things like this is going to happen to you, then this is going to happen to you, then this is going to happen to you. Most of the spreads that we are going to be learning are going to be more of this number that you rolled completely describes your entire personality, your loved ones, your family, your job, your ideas, your brain, your education, your wisdom, who you are as a person. And there is so much complexity to who we are as people that if we want 3 numbers to describe who we are as a person in its entirety, then you really, really have to understand the number as more than just starting a new job. Because starting a new job cannot be someone's entire personality. I mean, okay, For some people, starting a new job might be the entirety of their personality, but for most of us, that is not the entirety of our personality and who we are as a person, what we have been through, our trauma, the way that we react to things, our history and wisdom and past. So we really have to think about how one singular number can describe everything about a person, or at least a big, huge chunk. Because yes, you are going to get 3 numbers, or 6 numbers, or 12 numbers, or 10 numbers, depending on the spread that you're doing. And those numbers are going to describe the person and their entire life and every single thing they have done and who they are. So we have to get past just one is having a new baby or one is buying a new house. It's so much more than that when we talk about using numerology on its own without the use of something like suits, like swords and pentacles and so on. Okay, does that make sense? Is everybody following along so far? Okay, so now I'm going to open it up to you. Now that you have a very tiny paragraph to work with, don't worry, when I make the dice page for this website, it'll be a gigantic paragraph that describes the number 1 that goes into much more detail because we need it for really, really working on numerology. But I'm going to ask the class, if you were giving somebody a reading and the only number that they got was the number 1, tell me what kinds of things you would say about this person if we know that the number 1 has to describe every single aspect of who they are as a person and everything they have been through and everything that makes up who they are. What would we say if they rolled the number 1? Yes, thank you. That is awesome. Exactly. It's definitely going to mean that the person might be very independent. Ooh, tell me why. Why do you think it would mean that they might be artistic? Yes, a lot of beginnings. I love that, honey. Exactly. Yes, Paul, exactly. So, okay, I want to use Paul as an example. So that is exactly what you would do to take a number like number 1 with this teeny, teeny, tiny paragraph that you are offered during this class and to make it into somebody's personality. Because you read in that paragraph and because I said that this is the manifestation of ideas and this is somebody who is always manifesting new ideas, then you can infer that that person might be very artistic. And I love that you did that, Paul. Thank you. Yes, May, creations. Yes. Yes, motherhood would definitely fall into the number 1, for sure. The number 1 being, like I said, new beginnings. And new beginnings can definitely be described by fertility and by the birth of a new soul or a new child. And creation. Yes. So the number 1 is the creation and manifestation of everything. Everything. Whether that be ideas, actions, physical journeys, feelings, emotions. It is the beginning and manifestation of all of them. And when that describes your personality, that can be somebody who is always starting new things, who typically tends to get bored when they have, once they've started the thing, and they've been working on the thing for a few weeks, they're probably ready to start a new thing. That they get very, very bored in the middle of it, and they tend to always start new things, but not finish things as often. Somebody who is very independent, self-sufficient, and determined and motivated. But we also have to think about that flip side of the one too, that though usually the one does symbolize self-sufficiency, self-determination, and independence, that it can also be that to a fault. So sometimes when somebody is ultra, ultra, ultra independent, what does that necessarily mean about them? That sometimes when somebody is overly independent, that can be a sign of trauma, that they were always forced to do everything by themselves, that they might not have the biggest support system, that there's a reason why they are overly self-sufficient, that they are overly independent, that they don't seek help from others. Exactly, that it can be a trauma response, that the one can also symbolize someone who is struggling, somebody who might naturally be a very independent and self-determined person, but that there is a reason that the one is coming up and that they have lost a lot of their independence and determination and motivation, and that they have lost the excitement and passion of starting something new and beginning new journeys and getting really excited about new information and new paths and new things that they can try. The one is somebody who is always amazing at coming up with new names for things, that they're always amazing at coming up with new and different ways to do things, that they always see multiple paths that they can take, that they always they always end up getting extremely excited about something new that they can try, that they love trying new food, that they love traveling and going to new places, they love meeting new friends, they love meeting new people. But what else can that mean? That possibly you love meeting new people, but you're not as wonderful at keeping those relationships, that you end up starting a lot of new relationships but getting bored very quickly. And this goes for friends and romance. That you are really, really good, like I said, at starting new projects, but you get bored very fast and hardly ever finish them. That you tend to get very, very passionate and excited about a certain interest of yours, but then you lose excitement very quickly and now it's boring. That you love trying new food, but you don't like routine, that you don't like having to eat the same thing, having to eat leftovers, that food and life become only exciting when there's something new and lose that excitement when it's a routine, and that things tend to stagnate for you very quickly. So yes, inventors, definitely. This would be a huge one for inventors. Yes, Paul, definitely. It can definitely be the appearance of a problem caused by trauma or input from, yes. Yes, definitely. Once again, the one is the start of everything. So we can also think about that in kind of the opposite way that I was talking about it, because if it's the start of everything, it's also the start of new problems. It's also the start of new trauma. It's also the start of new fights and new anger and new resentment and new sadness and new grief as well. So if this is the number that's the beginning of everything, it is also the beginning of all the shitty emotions and the emotions you don't want to feel and the physical journeys that you hate being on And it's also the beginning of the things that suck, just as it is the beginning of the things that are exciting and wonderful. Okay. So if somebody was to roll the dice and get a 1, this is number 1. The wonderful thing is that 90% of the time, unless you're doing a spread in which there's only one dice or one die, which is very unlikely and probably something that I wouldn't suggest you do until you are very, very good at this, you will have the other numbers next to it. So you can read the 1 and kind of see the numbers next to it so that you know what this 1 might be referring to. So we're going to discuss and talk about the other numbers. But for example, the number 5, we are going to get to the number 5. But the number 5 is the symbol for chaos. It's the symbol for every single chaotic thing that has ever happened. It is just the extreme number of chaos. So if you get a 1 and it shows up right next to a 5, it's probably the beginning of chaos. Does that make sense? So you're going to be reading these numbers next to the other numbers. So you're going to start to understand the person as a whole with multiple numbers in front of you. You won't have to just do 1. Because if it's just one number, it becomes very difficult to describe somebody's entire personality and everything that they're going through with just one number. It can be done, and I do it sometimes, but it's much trickier. Ah, that is a great question, Andrea. So just kind of like, I feel like I slightly touched on that question even without reading it. So this is not this specific type of reading. Like I said in the beginning, you are not going to be giving them necessarily a good or a bad reading. There is not going to be a good or a bad outcome. You are taking the numbers as a whole, describing the numbers as a whole, and the person who rolled them is going to be affected by both the amazing, wonderful qualities of the number and the not so wonderful, amazing qualities of the number. So it's the number as a whole. It's both. This reading is not going to be good or bad. It is going to be both, because all numbers have a form of duality. All numbers are not good or bad. They just are. So just like this person's life that you are reading, you are not going to give them a good outcome or a bad outcome. The number just is, and you are going to describe the wonderful qualities of it as well as the crappy qualities of it, because somebody's life is usually not just good or bad. There's usually a huge mix. But the numbers next to the number 1, let's say they rolled the number 1. The numbers next to the number 1 are going to help you tell a little bit more of a story about who this person is and what they're going through and what their answers are to the questions they might have asked. But it's not going to be good or bad. Yes, exactly. So like when you use dice in spell work, if you've ever used dice in spell work before, you're using the entirety of the number. You are using everything that that number means in your spell work. You are not using the good qualities or the bad qualities. You are using the entirety of the number, just like in these readings that we're going to be giving. So the person does not have to ask a question. The person can ask a question, and then we can use the dice to help them maneuver through that question and help them get some answers that they might be seeking. But they can also just not ask a question, and you can just tell them about their life and about them and about their relationships and their job and their home and their everything.
Okay, thank you. I'm just used to, the tarot and oracle cards. You normally ask the question.
Yes, definitely. And yeah, this form of reading definitely differs a lot from the ones that people are going to be used to. for many, many reasons. And that is definitely one of them. That for dice reading, it's actually less common to ask a question. But that doesn't mean you can't. You can totally ask the dice a question.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. And
I
yes,
think Honey wanted to say something.
yes, honey.
How do you know what order to read them? Just like what order do they roll, or you just kind of take a guess?
Exactly. So it's going to be the order that they rolled them in.
Yeah. So, but what if they like all like put them all in their hand, roll them all at the same time, so it didn't just whatever way they rolled out from like left to right?
Oh, that's a great question. So actually, when you're giving a dice reading, you are going to have them roll the dice one at a time so that you have an order.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you.
Of course. So now that we've kind of discussed the overall meaning of the number 1, now I'm going to ask the question again. If somebody was to roll a number 1 in a dice reading and you had to tell them about their life and who they are as a person and everything about them as a person using the number 1 and everything that we just learned about the number 1, what would you say? Feel free to answer in chat, or you can totally just unmute yourself and answer. Either way.
I think I mentioned earlier in the chat, it was like that they may or may not fulfill their wants.
Yes, I love that. Definitely. Chaotic neutral. Yes. I love that. Definitely. This person would totally be chaotic neutral. We should make that a thing. We should describe every single number. Give it its placement.
I would think they would be kind of stable but chaotic with bouncing from thing to thing.
Yes, definitely. For sure. A pregnant artist who is going on vacation. If it's something they have planned, good on them, but be prepared for problems or unknown issues. I love that. And I can totally see where you got that from the number 1. I love that. That is, yep. Beautiful reading.
They're trying to look for happiness.
Yes, definitely. I could see that for sure.
If they had trauma or whatnot.
Yeah, and definitely like the process of continuously starting new things over and over again can definitely be kind of seen as seeking out not just happiness in general, but trying to seek out something that is going to heal you or that is going to make you feel better if you've gone through something really hard and difficult. As humans, and that's a great way too. That's such a great example. I love how you said that, because depending on if they asked a question, depending on where the 1 is showing up in their reading, you can definitely see, is this person constantly doing new things because that's just part of their personality? Or are they constantly doing new things because they're going through some sort of trauma or crisis? Because sometimes we're just the type of people that love to start new things. And sometimes when, let's say, you've gone through a really difficult relationship, sometimes that can lead you to thinking that you just need to start a new one over and over and over again. Or if you have gone through the loss of a friendship, that, the answer is to just make new friends. And so the number 1 can definitely be a response to going through something hard and just trying to start something new in hopes that it'll help to make you feel better.
Yes, kind of like self-medicating.
Yeah, definitely. So if we move on to the number 2 and trying to think of, remember that with each one of these numbers, we are trying to think of the number as a whole. Not just this is the good side of one and this is the bad side of one, but how is the number 1 an entire person? So we're going to do the same thing with number 2. How is the number 2 an entire person? So the number 2 is a decision. It is your ideas coming together to create a fork in the road and the representation of the decision that you must make. It is the symbol of polarity, the either or situations in life, and the determining point in your journey. This choice can manifest itself in your physical life, thoughts, actions, or emotions. It shows itself, and then we get to the point where it's upright and balanced or non-balanced. So remember, in dice reading, we're looking at both. There is no upside down or right side up. So the balanced 2 is when you are using empathy, grounded reasoning, logical thought, critically evaluating the decision, stabilizing your emotions, once again, and using love and kindness to make a choice. And that the choice is going to end up having a positive outcome for you. But the unbalanced side of the number 2 is that you are on a journey towards making the wrong decision. You should contemplate and seek inner guidance or guidance from others. Now, the unbalanced side of the number 2 can also be exactly what May just said. So I wanted to bring it up because I love that May said it. But it could be somebody who is just very indecisive, that they never know what they want. And this is very, very different than the number 1. Because if we are using the number 2 to describe an entire person, then this is probably somebody who is constantly trying to make a decision. So it is probably somebody who is very indecisive. But if they are very, very, very balanced in the number 2, then it could be somebody who is very, very good at making decisions. And that they're a very decisive person, that they always use empathy and kindness and critical thinking and logical thought and reasoning to make their decisions. They might typically tend to be the person in the friend group who makes all the decisions for everybody. They might be a leader. Their job might entail having to make tons and tons and tons of decisions all day long. They might be the type of person who in their romantic relationship always makes all the decisions. They are probably somebody who is very well-rounded. They are very grounded. They think about things very logically. They understand that there's always multiple points of view to every single decision and to every single debate and to every single issue. They might be able to see all sides and to which makes it so that they can create a very empathetic decision, that they are able to truly understand all sides of the argument. This might be somebody who usually likes to argue, that they enjoy debating, that they enjoy having very intellectual debates with people, that they really enjoy sharing their opinions on everything, that they really enjoy decision making and kind of being put into a situation where there are a lot of decisions that have to be made. They probably host a lot of things. They're also probably the type of person who might be interested in things such as politics or in world affairs and in communications. They are probably somebody who is very good at communication. But remember, there's also the opposite side of that, the unbalanced 2. And then we get the indecisive, and we get the people who never know what they want, the people who decisions make them go crazy, the people who are constantly struggling with decision making. the people who might not be the most logical thinkers, the people who might not enjoy debating, the people who don't know how to see things from all sides, and they tend to be very biased, and they tend to not accept new information and to get very, very stuck in their opinions. Somebody who possibly doesn't understand the topic and context of duality. So we have both, and both make up the entire person and who the person is. Okay, I want to see. Okay, so hold on. I'm scrolling through the chat. So Paul says, so this time we have an indecisive person who has decided to take his wife out to dinner, and he asks her, where do you want to eat, instead of choosing themselves. Or a diplomat who has decided to take his wife out to dinner, and he asks you, where do you want to eat, instead of choosing themselves. Awesome. Yes. That is a great way of looking at it. Totally. Yes, so before I keep going about the two, and we'll kind of talk about different scenarios and different examples, kind of like we did with the number one, but I'm going to ask the same question. If you were giving a reading and somebody rolled the number two, and you had to use the number two to describe their entire personality and life and wisdom and education and career and love and family and every single thing that entails this person's life, what would you say? Flip a coin instead. I love that. Yes, definitely. To be or not to be. Yes. Do it. Don't do it.
I think Paul kind of said it best with a person who decides one thing and then asks the other person what's next, versus taking the initiative to actually do it. Like if a one was rolled with the two, then it would be the person who takes the initiative to, like in his example, take her out to dinner and pick where to go, versus if it was a two and a two, then that would be more making the decision to to go out, but being indecisive about making it where to go.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, yes, totally. Oh, and I love how you put the one and the two together and how it would be different depending on if they got a one and a two or a two and a two. That was brilliant. Yes. And yes, number two can definitely mean fake news. I totally see what you mean by that. And yes, definitely. It can totally be that. Can you go into more detail about why you say that? Because I was going to say why you said that, but instead, I think you should say why would the number two mean fake news? And unreliable too, yes. Mm-hmm. And deceit. Yes, definitely. The Two of Pentacles card. Yes. Yep. Two of Pentacles upside down. Fake news. Deceit. Unreliable. Yeah. Totally. Yes, based on what they think you want to hear. Definitely. I love too how you guys are seeing the part of two that's not literally just decision making, but you are using the different parts of two to create real people and like real situations and real personality types, because a person's personality type is probably not just going to be based on their decision making, but you can decipher a lot based on the aspects of number 2. And I love how you're doing that, because the number 2, because they are able to see things from everybody else's perspective, because they have that logic and reasoning and also that aspect of duality, because it is the 2, then they would be really, really good at lying. They would be really, really good at telling you what you wanted to hear and then telling the other person what they want to hear, because they're able to see everybody's perspective, everybody's decisions, everybody's way of arguing, everybody's biases, everybody's opinions. And because of that, they would be very good at deception. Yes, it is an amazing number for an empath. Exactly. Because just like everything that I just said describes an empath very, very well. That because it's not even necessarily because they're an empathetic person, which they are. The number 2 is a very empathetic person. But also, you can use logic, reasoning, and the ability to understand everybody's point of view, the ability to really see the big picture. You can use that to help strengthen your empathy and use your empathy to not only help others, but also to help yourself. They do not want to make a mistake in their decision, definitely. Yes, exactly. A spy taking a mark out, trying to get info. Lots of variables. Yes. Oh, I love how well you are grasping the idea of the number 2, because the number 2 is a harder one to grasp because there's kind of so much to it. Duality is a very big word. There's a lot in the word duality. There's also a lot in logical thought and reasoning and empathy and critically evaluating things, decision making. The number 2 is a very complex number, and you have to kind of see in between the lines. It's not just this person's ability to decide where they want to eat, but it's so much more than that. And I think you guys are all understanding that really well. Yes. Yes, exactly. That's what we're going to learn in this class, is how to use a D20 for divination. Exactly. That's what this whole class is about. We're going to start with a D10, but yes, we will get to using a D20. The first few classes, we're going to focus on D10. Yes. So this whole class is, how to use dice for divination work, and we will get up to D20. Oh, you thought 1 was harder? Hey, that's awesome. I think maybe number 2 is hard for me personally. So number 1 was easier for me. Okay. So I think you guys, we are definitely, this is not the only time we are going to look at the numbers. We are going to be looking at numerology and all of these numbers millions of times during this class. So this is just kind of our first introduction to it. Also, you are going to have big, huge, giant paragraphs that I'm going to write out for all of you about each number. This will not be the only paragraph you're given. This is just our introduction. So let's move on to the number 3, unless anybody has any questions. Yes. So how this is going to work. Oh, don't worry. It's not ignorance at all. A D10 just means a dice with 10 numbers. A D20 just means a dice with 20 numbers. The numbers 1 through 20, or the numbers 1 through 10. And yes, so what we are going to do is, for the very first readings that we do in this class, you are going, which we are, by the way, going to give each other's readings. We are going to give each other readings today, for those of you who brought your dice with you. So, but anyway, so you are going to use, for this class, 3 D10 dice. And the person who's getting the reading, will roll one dice, then we'll mark that number. Then they'll roll the second dice, then we'll mark that number. Then they roll the third dice, and then you mark that number. If you only have one D10, you can just roll the D10 once, mark the number, pick the dice back up, roll it again, mark the number, roll it again, mark the number by writing it down. Or you can use 3 dice. So we are going to use the 3 dice for these readings. You will be using up to as many dice as you want for your readings. Once you get good enough and you truly understand this, you can use as many dice as you would like. So yes, a D20 has 20 sides. Not the combination of some dice to add up to 20. A D20 has 20 sides. Okay. So let's move on to oh wait, it looks like somebody raised their hand. Yes, Michelle.
If you only have one D20 dice, and they roll it each time, after you mark it, do you need to reclaim the dice for them to roll it a second time and a third time?
When I said mark the number, that's a great question. Thank you. I did say that funny. What I meant was write the number down. Write the number down on a piece of paper. When I said mark the number, write the number down on a piece of paper.
Okay, so they don't need to reclaim the dice. Just write it down, roll again, write it down, roll again.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. So the number 3 is actually a very controversial number. I got this question in the last the class that we did for numerology in general. We also have a numerology course. And the number 3 in Roman numerology, as well as Celtic numerology, is a very spiritual number. It is the divine number. It is the number of the goddess. It is the number of the maiden, the mother, and the crone. It is this divine number. That is not this number in Arabic numerology. There is no maiden, mother, crone. There is no divine number of 3. This is not the same thing. So in Arabic numerology, it does mean something different. It is not the divine number 3 that you know of from Celtic numerology. Just so you know, it's not an angel number. It's not any of those things. It's not the Holy Trinity. So just by the way, Celtic numerology, Roman numerology are going to be different. So in Arabic numerology, the number 3 is the power of 1 and 2 coming together. Your ideas have been set in stone. You have made the decisions that you need to make. You have started down your path and accomplished your goal. So the number 3 is a number of self-accomplishment. It is a success and an accomplishment that you accomplished on your own and by yourself. And this is very important because the number 3 and the number 6 are going to be very similar numbers. The number 3 represents self-accomplishment, a goal that you completed on your own, a journey that you completed on your own, whereas the number 6 also represents accomplishment and goal, like accomplishing your goals. But the number 6 is group accomplishment. It is something that you accomplished alongside of a huge group of people. So number 3 is self-accomplishment. So whether your success and accomplishment was emotional, physical, analytical, or based on taking action, it has come to fruition and placed you on a specific path in life. This achievement was done on your own, and it is the celebration of individual success and accomplishment. When this number is balanced, it is showing off your necessary achievements. It will have a positive outcome and become a stepping stone on your journey to happiness and success. If this number is imbalanced, then it is a representation of emptiness within your success. Most commonly, it is there to help you understand that you couldn't reach the destination you set out to. You were unable to accomplish the tasks and ideas that you might have set out to, and maybe it wasn't the right time or place to start. But sometimes this number shows itself imbalanced when you did accomplish your goals, but you are left with a feeling of emptiness instead of glory and accomplishment. It may be that this was just not the right time or not the right path for you, and you have to go back to the drawing board to come up with a new idea. Oh, bye, May. I'm so happy you were able to join us. I hope you can watch the recording. So the number 3 is self-accomplishment. So when we think about this number as the entirety of someone's personality, now remember this definition was written for tarot, so it's different. There will be ones written for this class. But anyway, when we think of the number 3, it is 1 and 2 coming together. Number 3 is represented by the starting of a journey, by the manifestation of a journey. It is represented by decision making, because in order to accomplish something, in order to be somebody who is very accomplished, somebody who is very successful, somebody who has a lot of self accomplishments that they accomplished all on their own, in order to do that, you also need 1 and 2. You need to have started, and you need to have made decisions. In order to reach the number 3, 1 and 2 must also exist. So this might be somebody who, like I said, is probably successful, probably somebody who is going through a time period of happiness, success, gratitude, abundance, wealth. This is somebody who is very good at accomplishing their goals. They're very good at setting up a plan to accomplish their goals, getting done the things that they need to get done in order to accomplish that, and somebody who is really good at starting a task and finishing it. This is somebody who really prides themselves on being able to accomplish tasks and goals on their own. Remember that the aspect of 3 that is personal accomplishment done by yourself, is a very important aspect of the number 3. It is the number that happens when things come together and you were able to start something, you were able to have motivation, you were able to have logical thought and reasoning and empathy and love and kindness. You were able to take all of those decision-making skills, all of that motivation, all of those abilities to start new projects, and you were able to actually bring all of those to fruition. 3 is the number of the harvest, that you were able to plant the seeds. You were able to take care of the seeds. You were able to make decisions that help the seeds grow. And then you were able to harvest them and eat them. And 3 is the number of that harvest. It is harvesting the crops that you sowed. It is reaping what you sow. It is being able to understand all of the tasks that need to be done and finish them. It is also bringing success, love, friendship to others. So when we think about personal accomplishment, a lot of times people skip very quickly to job accomplishments, to money accomplishments, to being able to get your first house, to being able to do really well for your family, to be a successful person when it comes to capitalism and when it comes to money. And that is an aspect of it, definitely. This person probably does well in those things also. But remember that personal accomplishment is also all of the emotional and sociological traits as well, such as making friends. That is a personal accomplishment. And for some people, the friends and people that they have in their lives is what makes them wealthy, is what makes them prosperous, is the people that they have around them. For some people, it's their community. For some people, it's their activism. For some people, personal accomplishment, things that you were able to accomplish and goals that you were able to set for yourself and accomplish can be anything. And so thinking outside the box is very important. Yes, this person might be well off financially, but they also might not be. They might just be somebody who has a large community around them. They might be somebody who their goal was to make a whole bunch of friends, or to get a romantic partner, or to buy a puppy. Whatever it is, we have to think outside the box. Do not just think wealth in money. This person is wealthy and prosperous and accomplished, but it might be in something that's not money. Hold up. I'm going to read the chat. Yes, I love your scenarios too, Paul. This is fabulous. Okay, so Paul says, this time we have an analytical psychologist who has written a research paper that has been well received by other doctors. But under peer review, there is a few stumbling points, and it was refused to be given the ability to publish. But it turns out it was just full of typos and grammar errors. Their friends just thought it was a draft. I love that. And yes, that encompasses, I love that number one, you took the success of the number three so well. This is a very successful person. And we don't even have to take the end of the scenario. The fact that it didn't get published doesn't really matter. They are an accomplished psychologist who's writing a research paper. Already that is the number three. Already we see the number three in that, because they are somebody who obviously accomplished a lot of goals, even to just become a psychologist. We have somebody who's writing a research paper, which once again would take decision making. It would take starting something new. It would require goals. It would require success, and it would require motivation and self-determination. So already in the very beginning of that, we have huge signs of the number three. We have somebody who's analytical, somebody who accomplished their goal of becoming a psychologist, somebody who accomplished their goals of going to school, getting good grades, and becoming this person. But then we also have the unbalanced part of the number three written out so well that their research paper didn't get published, that it had typos and grammar errors, that they possibly tried to finish it too quickly. They didn't review it and read it over and over and over again enough, and they ended up turning in something that they weren't as proud of. This shows off the success of the number three, the diligence of the number three, the wealth of the number three, but also kind of the unbalanced aspects of the number three as well. So that was such a great scenario. Thank you, Paul. So yes, so the difference between the Three of Pentacles and the Six of Pentacles in tarot would be that the Three of Pentacles is going to represent a self-accomplished goal, something that you accomplished on your own that has to do with your house or your money or your family or your friends, something that is pentacles. And pentacles represents earth, which is represented by all things that you can touch, all things that exist on this planet, all things that are a part of this earth, which is going to be different from something like chalices, which is going to represent emotions. So if you have the Three of Pentacles, it is going to be a self-accomplishment. It is going to be wealth and prosperity and joy that you created, goals that you accomplished on your own that have to do with earthly pentacles. Whereas the Six would be something that it took a group to accomplish. One of the examples that I really like to use is college. And so the three is going to represent you decided to go to college, you applied, you got in, and you got an A in your first class. Most of that was you. You did that. That was your accomplishment. Most of that you did on your own. You got an A in your first class, you got accepted to college. This is the number 3. You did most of those things on your own. The 6 is going to be represented by graduating, by getting your diploma. Because in order to get your diploma, you needed somewhere around 25 different professors. You needed the coffee guy at the bookshop who gave you coffee every morning while you studied for 6 hours. You needed your friends to text you when the homework was due and you were sick. You needed your study groups. You needed your tutor. You needed your university. Oh my gosh, wow. I just got out of school too. The person who helps you sign up for your classes. You needed the school counselor, you needed the guidance counselor, and so on and so forth. There were many, many people involved in your success. It was not just you. There were so many people that helped you accomplish that goal, that would be the number 6. So does that make sense? Of course, I'm glad it helped. And yes, Michelle, is your hand raised?
Yes.
Awesome. What's up?
A multitasker. Someone that likes to do a lot of things.
Oh, a multitasker. Yes,
yeah.
definitely.
Sometimes it can be good, sometimes it can be bad, but they love to do multiple things. It's almost like an OCD thing for them.
Yes, definitely. I can totally see that. This can definitely be somebody who is a multitasker and who likes to do too many things all at once. Definitely, I can see that.
Thank you.
Of course. Oh, thank you. My tarot classes are awesome. I would love that. I do have a mentorship tarot program, so please message me after this class so we can get that set up. Yes. For a lot of people, more things are accomplished when you do one thing at a time. For some people, it's harder to do one thing at a time. That doesn't mean that more work wouldn't be accomplished if they were able to stick to one thing at a time. But for some people, it's very difficult to stick to one thing at a time. Like for me. And yes, of course, you can definitely email me. Yes. Definitely. Of course. And yes, honey.
Okay, so just 3 itself, even with 1 and 2 coming together, I would more picture just a 3 kind of being, for lack of a much more delicate way to put this, a basement dweller. Someone who is more of a loner, who likes to do their own thing. Not necessarily someone who is super motivated, but also not someone who is lazy. Just kind of like somewhere in the middle, like if it has to get done, I'll do it. No complaints, just it is what it is. And in doing that, it takes decision making, adding the 2 along with that. But if you add the 1 on it, then that, again, lack of a better way to put it, basement dweller would be more adamant, and instead of just staying on a computer finishing coding for the 100th website when he's 16, he is more motivated to get out and look for a job or higher education even before he's technically ready for it, age-wise. And if you put the 2 with the others, well, again, that just kind of makes it more that the dude's super smart and he's ready to take on the world. Of having the motivation to get out there, look for higher education, to get a better job, to build more than just websites, maybe even hack some kind of governmental thing, because hackers like to do that, I hear. And has to go through the enrollment process and everything like that in order to make that accomplishment fulfilled. Even though he's already done way more than what most are capable of for his age.
Wow. Yes. No, exactly. I totally, yes. And that would be such a perfect explanation for all three of those numbers together, and for even the 3 by itself. The explanation that you gave for the 3 by itself was amazing. I completely agree with you. I couldn't have said it better. I agree.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sounds like a young genius.
Yeah. Definitely.
I was gonna say the same thing. Wow, that was perfectly said, and that actually describes my husband.
Must be a smart man.
He is very intelligent, very intelligent. But I think the family kind of holds him back.
Aw.
So, yes, I love Honey's explanation. Does anybody else have kind of a scenario, or what would you say if somebody rolled just a 3 and you had to describe their entire personality and everything going on in their lives with just a 3? What would you say?
I mentioned in the chat earlier, a manifester.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yes, Paul. For sure. Okay. So I loved everybody's answers for number 3. It was beautiful. And if you do have anything more to say about the number 3, please put it in the chat. Even if we have already moved on to the next number, I will definitely read it. And I really would love to hear what you have to say about the number 3. So we are going to move on to the number 4. So the number 4, people, this one, at least to me, is a very, very easy number to describe about somebody all on its own. And I think the number 4 describes so many people. And it's a very easy number to kind of see the big picture and be able to use this number to describe an entire person's personality and everything that they're going through. Because the number 4 is stability and discipline. The number 4 is stable, strong, and disciplined. It is sturdy and structured and durable. You've gotten used to your routine and become grounded in its structure. You have been complacent and stagnant lately, with no progression or digression in your life. This is a time of rest and stability. This is a necessary time period that we all must go through in life, and for some it's a place of relief. Your thoughts, emotions, actions, or physical world have fallen into place, and you are content with the monotony of life. When this number is balanced, it shows your complacency. You are content with this lifestyle, and it is a welcomed moment of routine and rest. You are not ready to go back to the unpredictability of life, and this is a good place for you right now. It can be a time of peace and reflection. But if you stay there too long, you get the unbalanced 4. Even though the stability can feel genuinely fulfilling and needed, you cannot stand still forever. Still water grows stagnant. If you have been in this place for too long, then this number will present itself unbalanced, showing your need to break out of this shell and start flowing again. Though movement might be scary with potential ups and downs, it is necessary for growth. When you cannot handle the motionless void in your life and stability turns to boredom, it is time to move on and seek excitement and risk. Get out of your comfort zone and seek growth and opportunity. So for me, this is such an easy way to kind of see somebody's entire personality. Yes, and I love how you said a grandparent. Definitely. I think that's something that we tend to use the idea of the elders in our life as people who have slowed down and people who have gained routine, people who are at peace, who get to relax and who get to contemplate their life, who get to have a lot of introspection, who get to be very set in routines, that things are not going to go up and down as quickly anymore. There's not going to be as much unpredictability in your life. You have time to sit still and time for meditation, time for introspection, time for peace, and time to grow on the inside rather than having life be so chaotic. Okay. So the Four of Wands, Natalia, right? Yeah, Natalia. The Four of Wands is going to be representation, yes, of that stability, the groundedness, it is security, but because it's wands, wands are fire. Wands are fire and action and motivation and all of the actions that you take every single day. So if you have a four of action, a four of motivation and fire and passion, then that is what's going to become stable. So you are no longer doing as many things, that your life is much more consumed with your emotions and your money and your job and your thoughts and your introspection and your wisdom and education. And it's no longer as focused on having to do 5 million things at every moment of every day. And you get to have a lot more peace and time to reflect and time to be stable and gain routine in your actions, because that card is wands. But remember, in this class, we are talking about the number 4 in and of itself, without actions or wands or anything placed upon it. So this is stability and routine and introspection and meditation and peace of everything, of your actions, of your emotions, of your job and wealth and career, and of your thoughts and wisdom and education. This is everything. And everything is at peace. Everything is in routine. Everything has slowed down. And you are someone who is in a time of reflection. The number 4 is also represented in some spiritualities as the time of death, that all things go in a cycle. Things go in a cycle and they start with the number 1, and you have all this motivation and all of this excitement. You have to make all these decisions and you make all these friends in the number 3 and you accomplish all these goals. And then 4 is the time of dormancy. It's like with trees when they go dormant for the winter. It's not death as in you never come back. It's death as in becoming dormant, giving it time for rest and peace before you start up again. So Paul says, this time we have a workaholic that enjoys his job. New management has come in and he realizes he needs to evaluate his place at the company. After evaluation, they decide to post their resume online. Not only do they find a new job, but get a pay raise to boot with more time off. Though I agree with you and I know where you're going with that, I would say, which this actually says a lot about you, Paul. That's very interesting. So when Paul hears a time to rest and do nothing, that means put a resume in online, evaluate your place at the company, get a new job and a raise. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Andrea says retirement, which yes, totally. Agreed. Retirement, definitely number 4. A golfer says, honey, yes, definitely. Yes, a 4-leg stable table, definitely. That is kind of how I like to interpret 4 and all of its groundedness and stability is the 4 legs of a chair or a table. Is that, you know, it requires 4 legs in order to have stability. So exactly. So remember that the 4 is the time to stop. So when the 4 describes an entire person's personality, the entire person's personality and what they're doing with their life at the moment is nothing. Now, 4 doesn't mean obviously that like they quit their job and they're doing absolutely nothing at all, and just like sitting and not moving. But it does mean that they're not really trying to move up at work. They're just doing the same routine at work that they've always done. They're not trying to redesign their house, but they are continuing to upkeep with the stability that their house needs. So all of the routines that their house needs to stay clean, they're doing, but they're not doing any extra. There's no like big spring cleaning happening. You just get home and, you know, you do the dishes, you wipe down the sink and you go lay down in bed. There's no extra happening. You have gotten into a routine and you are not doing anything that would progress you in life, but you are not doing anything that would digress you in life. You are just doing the same routine every single day, all the time, and you find peace and stability in it. That you have realized what you need to do. You've realized what the kids need to be stable. You've realized what your family needs to be stable. You've realized what your job needs to continue to be stable. And you're just doing that. And that's it. And you are just creating this routine that you can do every single day that doesn't progress your life or digress your life or cause any movement at all. It is just routine and peace. Yeah, I do. I've actually, I've had a lot of people at work where I work talk about this idea of just going in and doing the bare minimum to not progress your job, to not get any, you know, to not be seen as the best employee, to not get raises or do anything that's going to get you noticed, but to just get your job done and then go home and to just be and exist in a routine that is not going to cause harm to your life, but it's also not going to better your life. You are just being still in routine. So for this person and their personality, it is going to be somebody who probably, I'm making a lot of assumptions, which you kind of end up doing anyway, just based on what numbers you're getting next to these numbers. So we're gonna discuss and talk about. Honey has already kind of done it with all of the times that she's talking about the numbers, but what's going to change about the reading if you have a different number. So if you have a 4 and that's next to a 1, it is going to be a different reading than a 4 next to a 3, and so on. But so a 4 by itself is probably somebody who's had their job for a couple years now. They know exactly what they need to do. They have had their routine set. They are not moving into a new house. They are not having new kids. They are not getting into new relationships. They are not making new friends. They are not trying out new foods and doing a bunch of new things. They are eating what they know they like, being around who they know they like being around, reading the books they know they like, watching the shows that they know they like, doing the same thing at work every day that they know they need to get done, and just living life in a way that is very safe, very stable. So, if I was to ask you, what would you say about someone if they just rolled the number 4? You have no other numbers to go off of. They just rolled the number 4. What would you say about them and who they are as a person? I can definitely see that, especially if they were to get just the 4, or even if they were to get something like 444. I could definitely see somebody who might be autistic.
Or they might be content.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely not ambitious at this moment in their life, or even possibly for a very long time. Possibly OCD, for sure. I could definitely see that. I would say with OCD, possibly, like, yes, I could definitely see OCD. I think that in the brain of a person with OCD, this probably is not peace. So I would say that that one's a little bit debatable, because in the mind of somebody with OCD, it would still be chaos. It would still be that they are not doing these things the same way, like the exact same way every single day, because it brings them peace. Their brain would still feel very unpeaceful. But yes, I could definitely see OCD. Why are you screwed? I can definitely tell, Paul, that you are not a 4. I think that 4 is probably a really hard number for some people to empathize with, or to put themselves in the shoes of, if you're not just like this already. You are a 3. I think that the reason that Paul, or actually, you know what? Instead of trying to interpret what Paul says, I will let. Oh, you're a 5. 5. Me too. But I will let Paul describe why he said OCD instead of trying to interpret for Paul. Why would you say OCD, Paul?
He's on sabbatical.
Oh, I know, right? So I was thinking that Paul was saying OCD because I mentioned that somebody does. Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's where I thought you were going with it. Yep. So you're doing the exact same thing every single day, which brings you comfort. So that's where um, but, and Natalia, as much as I would love, I really do, I want to answer all your questions about tarot because I love tarot and tarot's my favorite thing to talk about. But for this class and for the sake that we only have 15 minutes left, I am going to ask if you go to our YouTube channel, just go to Divination Academy on YouTube. There are 15 videos where I teach all about tarot, and you can go to the minor arcana video, which is the first video, and it will tell you what every single minor arcana card means and what it means upside down. Of course, I'm so sorry. Oh, and honey. Yes.
Sorry, I one didn't mean to have my hand up before. I misinterpreted when you were about to ask. Okay, so what does everyone think?
Yes, please tell me.
If you want, you can skip over me so we can have time to do to 5 since we only have 15 minutes left.
Oh, no. Go ahead. It's okay.
Okay. Okay. So to me, I would think 4 would be, I kind of thought of 3 options, but let's go with the middle avenue. I would think it would be like a mom with uh a kid who has a special routine that they would need, like someone that's autistic, uh that they would need to have certain things to make sure that their house, their family, their life functions on an even keel, which would bring peace, even though it may be needing exactly 5 fish sticks versus 4. It still brings comfort to know that that routine is there for the peace of the home. Or it could just be a parent that has a kid or kids that have a lot of stuff that they do. Like MTG games and D&D and soccer and ballet and Friday and every other Friday night date. I mean, that takes a lot to balance. So getting into a routine with that, even though it's chaotic, with that routine, they're all grounded. They have what they need to have life even and stable.
Wow, you are you trying to describe my family? The first one with the autistic, yeah, we have the routine with our youngest, but we want to spread our wings, but it's difficult. So, yeah, you described our family.
Oh, I was actually thinking of the Netflix show Atypical. Me and my mom recently got into that. It's really good.
I love that show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I started watching it. I haven't. I've been busy trying to get into this a lot, so I haven't had much time for that. But I did start watching that, and that is a great show.
And yes, I love it. I agree with you completely. That is a fantastic representation of the number 4. And I actually find it very interesting too that when we talk about 4 in tarot, where instead of making it the person's entire personality, instead we're just talking about one tiny aspect of their life. Nobody mentioned anything like autism or kind of trying to discuss and talk about why somebody would need very strict routine, why they would need things to not be unpredictable, why they would need extreme stability, why they would want this type of peace and routine, and even complacency and to feel comfort. And everybody just talked about how wonderful this would be, how badly and deeply they need 4, how they wish that they could be in the number 4. And then when we take that aspect out of the suits and we take the suits away, suddenly the number 4 becomes something that's much harder for people to identify with. And I find that interesting.
Well, I was able to understand it because of having autistic children, and the reason why you need that with autistic children is because they need to know what's coming. They need routine. Without routine, it's just they're gonna have meltdowns after meltdowns, and it'll be chaotic. So your best bet is to my husband wants to write a book on our family and on how to good suggestions on how to raise children with autism, because we have 2 oldest that are doing phenomenal on their own because they're high functioning, and our youngest is severe with multiple disabilities. So they definitely need that stability.
Definitely. And I think that yeah, it's just when this becomes someone's entire personality and their entire life and kind of where they are in all aspects of their life, it becomes very, very different than somebody who is only at the fore in one aspect of their life, such as needing to take a break from emotions. And so you end up just deciding that for a while, for the next like year, you're just going to be single and focus on you and create a routine, and that you're not going to start a whole bunch of first dates. And that can be another aspect of the 4, when it's only related to just your emotions and love life. But when this is your entire life and it is every single aspect of your life, people start looking at it a little bit differently, and the 4 kind of changes. Nobody in this class was saying, oh my gosh, I wish that was me. Whereas in the tarot class, everybody was saying they wished it was them. And so the 4 kind of changes its meaning when it's your entire life and everything about you and who you are. And that is very interesting. So remember that the 4, like everything that we've already said so far, it is your stability and your routine. But it also, if you do stay in the 4 forever and you never have any progression or digression in any aspect of your entire life, then things can get stagnant and you end up seeking out the next number. And our next number is the number 5, my favorite number. Even though this did backfire on me in one of our classes. I always say the 5 is my favorite number. I always put 5 in all of my spell work. 5 is the number that I use for every single thing that I have ever done magically, and 5 is my all-time favorite number. But beware of that. Part of this class, we will be learning how to use dice in spell work, not just for divination. And when you take the 5 and you put it into all of your spell work, well, it might work. And things can get a little crazy. So anyway, the number 5 is the